Hey everybody, Ryan here at etrailer. Today on our 2021 Ford Ranger, we're going to be showing you how to install the Roadmaster towed vehicle battery charge line kit. But before we do that, why don't we kind of check it out and I'll explain to you why you definitely want to use it. So before we kind of get too carried away talking about our charge line kit, let's just kind of go over the basics and refresh yourself on the 5 main components that we're actually going to need to flat tow our Ranger down the road safely. So there's going to be a total of 5 main components needed to flat tow your Ranger down the road safely. First one's going to be the base plate, and that's going to provide us with a solid and reliable connection point. That way we can hook our tow bar up to it. Tow bar is going to be that second component, and this is going to be the physical link that connects the front of your Ranger to the back of your motorhome. Third main component is going to be safety cables, and these are there in the event of an unlikely disconnect. These are going to keep your truck paired with your motorhome. The fourth main component is going to be tow bar wiring. And what this is going to do is transfer the lighting signals from the back of your coach to the back of your truck, keeping you safe and legal. And the fifth main component is going to be a braking system. All right, and what this is going to do is apply the brakes in your Ranger whenever you hit the brakes in your RV, helping bring you to a more predictable and complete stop. Another thing I would highly recommend is what's called a brake light relay. All right, and what that's going to do is let all your signals function properly at the back of your Ranger. And that's because without that, the brake signal will override the turn signal. So let's say if you're at a stoplight, have your left, or approaching a stoplight, you have your left turn signal on, everything's working like it should, but after an allotted amount of time, when you apply the brakes, the brake light is going to overrule the turn signal. So your motorhome will be flashing on the left side, but the truck will just have brake lights. And that relay has got to solve that issue and let people know what your intentions are. So with that said, I did mention the use of a braking system, okay? And many braking systems, generally speaking, are going to operate from your towed vehicle's battery. So that's where they're going to get their power from. So whenever you're towing down the road, what's going to happen is when that braking system activates, it's going to slowly kind of deplete your battery and use the juice. Well, that could be a problem. You know, if you flat tow for a long time, you know, you can arrive to your destination, unhook everything, try to start up the truck to take it for a spin, and the battery's dead. Right, and then it's a big headache. You got to find jumper cables, a jump box, potentially bother someone to ask for help. And the charge line kit is going to eliminate that. And it's also going to eliminate you needing to stop and start your vehicle for a while. Because if you flat tow for a minute, sure, you could stop every few hours, start the car, let it run to kind of charge itself back up, but that's kind of a hassle. You know, you got to take it out of flat tow mode and go through that whole thing, and it's kind of just you're leaving yourself for an accident to happen, more or less. You know, it's a lot going on. Charge line, not gonna have to worry about it. It's got to use your motorhome's auxiliary power whenever it's running to trickle charge that battery. That way, it's going to keep it topped off and in great working order. That way, when you get to your destination, you're going to have the confidence knowing you turn the key and the truck's going to fire up. So there's a couple things that's worth noting about this setup. One of them being the fact that it uses what's called the circuit breaker. All right, and that's going to keep everything protected. So it's only going to allow that current to flow one way, more or less, because if there was an issue and it started backfeeding, that breaker would trip and keep everything protected. So you have nothing to worry about there. Another thing I want to bring up is the fact that this kit isn't going to affect your motorhome's batteries, if that makes sense. So it's not going to drain them or anything like that. So even if you stopped somewhere overnight to get some shut-eye, you won't have to come back here and disconnect this or anything like that. Whenever the RV is not running, it's not going to be charging the battery. When it is running, though, that's when you're going to get the power, and there's nothing to worry about there because with the motorhome running, it's going to have the alternator generating electricity and recharging those batteries. So you definitely have the amperage to spare, and it's going to do a great job of just keeping everything in working order. So at the end of the day, it's a cheap insurance policy to make sure you're not left stranded with a dead battery. Now, as far as the installation goes, believe it or not, it's really simple. There's one wire that you have to hook up to your 6-way connector here at the front. Run it right up to the circuit breaker. A couple terminals go over that, and then it just hooks right up to the positive battery terminal. So really straightforward, everything's easy to get to and everything else like that. Speaking of which, though, let's go ahead, pull into the shop and put it on together now. To begin our install, we're going to be working here in the engine compartment. So you're going to need to lift up your hood. And what we need to do is remove this plastic radiator cover. So in order to get that done, if we come over here to the passenger side of our truck, we're going to have this air intake port, and we need to remove those bolts. So you can use a big flathead screwdriver or also a T30 Torx bit to get those pulled out. From there, we're going to have a total of 5 push pin type fasteners that we need to pull out just like this. Get them out, you can use a trim tool or again another flathead. Just going to pry underneath the head of the fastener, lift it up, then you're able to pull the base out. So I'll use that same technique to get the remaining fasteners removed. If the head pulls out of the base, not that big of a deal. Just get the two apart and you can just kind of pop them back together. So once you have all of them removed, you can kind of grab up on the cover, lift it up and set it to the side. Now we can grab our breaker and get it mounted up. So over here on the driver's side, we're gonna have a nice solid thick piece of plastic that's easy to get to but out of the way, if that makes sense. And so I'm gonna mount it up right here in this area, and I'm just gonna use the provided self-tapping screws to do so. Now we can grab our length of wire that comes with the kit, and we need to strip back the insulation on one end here. I like to give it a good twist to keep the wires nice and tight. Then we're going to grab one of these smaller ring terminals. That's just going to slide over the bare end of the wire, and we're going to crimp it down. That way it'll stay attached to the wire. What we'll do is move to our breaker, and on the goldish color post, you're going to remove that nut and be careful taking these off. They like to just kind of shoot off the end there and can be tricky to find if you drop them. We're going to take our ring terminal, slide it over that post, take our nut, get it started again. We'll come back with a 3/8 size socket and snug it down. You don't have to get these super tight, just snug. It'll do the trick. And now what I'm going to do with our length of wire is route this down to our 6-way connector at the front of our vehicle. That way we can get it hooked up to the back of it. So I went ahead and got our wire routed. Pretty straightforward. Just ran along through here and then kind of behind our headlight. You can essentially just drop that wire straight down to the underside of our truck. And once it's down there, you can kind of reach in behind this opening and simply just pull it out. So this is going to need to get hooked up to your round 6-way connector. So I'll undo the rubber boot there. And feed it through that boot. Then we can grab a couple tools, get our wire cut and hooked up. So I went ahead and cut our wire to length and strip back the insulation on that end. And now we can hook it up to the 6-way connector, So we're going to put it on that middle post. And back that screw out. Place it into the connector. Take that screw out a little more. Place it into that connector. I'm going to hold it in place and simply just snug this back down. So now that we have our wire hooked up to the back of our 6-way connector plug and we're done installing all of our components on the back of this, I'm going to take some dielectric grease. You can pick it up here at etrailer. Just coat those terminals to help keep them protected from corrosion and things like that. A nice coating on there. From there we can put the cover back on, and I'm just going to grab some electrical tape, seal everything up, and once I have that done, I'll simply just re-secure it to our bracket. So now moving back to our breaker, we can get the rest of our kit hooked up. So that extra length of wire that we had trimmed from the other connector there, where our 6-way connector was, all I simply did on one end of it, stripped the wire back, crimped on a small ring terminal, and secured it to the silver post here. Same way we did this one. And then this is going to get routed over to our positive battery terminal. Okay, so just ran it through here and kind of pushed it into the engine compartment where it comes out through here. And then this end, I crimped on the larger ring terminal. So if you lift up on our cover, we're going to have several posts that we can work with here. I'm going to use this one because there's nothing else connected to it. It's kind of all by itself, and I figure that's the most ideal. That way we don't risk, you know, unbolting another power line that really doesn't need to be unbolted for any reason. So with that said, I'm going to remove this nut using a 10mm socket. Get that pulled off. Take a ring terminal, slide it over, and simply just tighten this back down. Now that everything is hooked up, we can reinstall our radiator cover panel here the opposite way that we removed it. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Roadmaster towed vehicle battery charge line kit on our 2021 Ford Ranger.